For almost 3 years, Daniel and I never really had secrets when it came to phones. We knew each other's passcodes. We left them face up on the coffee table, on the nightstand, wherever. Neither of us thought twice about it. So when he started turning his phone face down about 6 weeks ago, I noticed almost immediately. Not because I went looking for a reason, but because it was just different from anything we'd done before. Then one night, while his phone was charging in the other room, his smartphone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at it out of habit. A name I didn't recognize. Underneath it, "I wish tonight could have lasted longer." I'm 27. Daniel's 29. We've been together 3 years, living together for the last 14 months, in a 2-bedroom apartment near his office. We talked, loosely, about getting engaged sometime next year, after his firm finished a merger he'd been working nights on. I bring this up because it matters later. That timeline is part of why I didn't want to blow anything up over a single notification. We'd always had what I thought was an unusually low-drama relationship when it came to trust. Neither of us had ever gone through the other's phone. We didn't need to. He'd tell me if a female coworker texted him something mildly annoying. I'd tell him when my ex randomly liked an old photo. It wasn't a rule, it was just how we operated. About 2 months before the phone thing started, Daniel got promoted to manage a small team on a project that had been failing before he took it over. He started working later, not shockingly late, but later than before, usually home around 7:30 instead of 6. He talked about it a lot at first. The stress, a difficult coworker, a director who kept moving deadlines. Then, gradually, he stopped talking about it much at all. Before any of this, our evenings looked pretty boring in a good way. We'd cook something simple, half-watch a show. He'd fall asleep on the couch by 10. He wasn't the type to hide his phone or step outside to take a call. If anything, he was almost oblivious about privacy. He'd read texts out loud to me without thinking about it, complain about people from work by name. That's part of why the face-down thing stood out. It wasn't subtle for him. It was a new behavior, and new behaviors from someone who's usually an open book tend to get noticed. The face-down thing started around the same time as the promotion, so at first I told myself it was stress, that he didn't want to see one more Slack notification while we were trying to have dinner. I didn't say anything for the first couple weeks. Then he started taking his phone with him even when he left the room for something small, getting the mail, taking out the trash, once into the bathroom, which he never used to do. I noticed it building. The way you notice a friend has lost weight before you can say exactly how much. Nothing on its own was proof of anything. It was more that I felt myself paying attention differently. And I didn't love the person I was becoming, someone who tracked which room her boyfriend's phone was in. I brought it up carefully one night while we were doing dishes. I said something like, "You've been kind of protective of your phone lately. Everything okay?" He didn't get defensive right away. He said work had been a nightmare, that he had a coworker constantly messaging him after hours about the project, and that it was honestly embarrassing how much he'd been checking it out of anxiety, not wanting me to see how stressed he actually was. Honestly, that explanation made sense to me. Anxiety hiding a secrecy is a real thing, and Daniel has always downplayed stress instead of talking about it. I remembered him doing something similar before a big presentation the year before, getting quiet, distracted, short with me, and it had nothing to do with anyone else. I felt a little embarrassed for even bringing it up. I told him he didn't have to hide being stressed from me, that I wasn't going to judge him for it, and he said okay. For about 10 days, things felt normal again. He even left his phone on the counter a couple of times while he showered, which felt like proof I'd overreacted. Then came the watch notification. I wish tonight could have lasted longer. The name attached to it was Renee, someone I recognized because Daniel had mentioned her before, in passing, as one of the people on his new team. When I asked him about it, he didn't flinch, which I remember thinking was either a really good sign or a really bad one. He said Renee had messaged him because their team had stayed late finishing a deck for a client presentation the night before, and that the message was just her being dramatic about how long the night had been. He showed me, without me even asking, a screenshot of the conversation, which did look like normal work back and forth about slides and a deadline. I almost let it go completely. Almost. Except 2 days earlier, when I'd asked how his evening was, he told me he'd stayed late by himself finishing reports, that everyone else on the team had already left. I remember it specifically because I'd asked if he wanted me to save him dinner, and he'd said no. He'd just grabbed something on his own on the way home. So either he'd forgotten Renee was there, which seemed unlikely for a two-person late night, or he'd told me something that wasn't true. I didn't say anything about the discrepancy right away. I wanted to be sure I wasn't reading too much into an offhand comment from 2 separate days. The following week, I ran into Priya, a friend of mine who also happens to know a couple of people on Daniel's floor through a mutual former coworker. We were catching up over coffee, and she mentioned, casually, that she'd heard Daniel's team had been going out a lot lately. Drinks after work, not just staying late for deadlines. She wasn't trying to tell me anything. She genuinely thought I already knew, since she assumed Daniel and I told each other that kind of stuff. I asked Daniel about it that night, trying to keep my voice as neutral as I could manage. I said, "Priya mentioned you guys have been going out after work a lot. I didn't realize that was a regular thing." He paused for maybe 2 seconds too long and said, "It's not that regular, maybe once a week if that." I asked if Renee usually came. He said, "There's like 6 of us. She's on the team, so yeah, sometimes." Notice that. He didn't say yes or no. He gave me a head count. I let it sit for a few days, mostly because I didn't want every conversation between us to turn into a cross-examination. But small things kept surfacing. I noticed he'd started responding to texts from her with a thumbs up instead of words, which felt oddly careful for someone who used to read his messages out loud without thinking. I noticed the team dinners only ever seemed to include him and Renee whenever I asked a follow-up question about who else was there. About 10 days after the coffee with Priya, I was looking for a charging cable in his desk drawer, genuinely looking for a cable, not snooping, and found a receipt from a restaurant dated the night he'd told me he was finishing reports alone. 2 entrees, 1 glass of wine, 1 old-fashioned. I don't know Renee's drink order, but I know his. I'd bet money it wasn't a solo dinner of reports and spreadsheets. When I brought the receipt to him, that's when the story started changing in pieces instead of all at once. First, it was, okay, she was there, but it was still about work. I just didn't think it was worth mentioning. Then, when I pointed out he'd specifically told me he was alone, it became, I didn't want you to make it into something it wasn't. Then, when I asked why he needed 2 seconds to answer a simple head count question a week earlier, he got quiet and said, "Because I knew how it would sound." That's the part that actually got to me, not the dinner. The fact that he'd already run the math on how it would sound to me and decided to handle that by managing what I knew instead of just telling me the truth. It came out, slowly, over that same conversation, that the dinners with Renee had been happening roughly once a week for about 6 weeks, right around when the phone habits changed. He said nothing physical had happened. He said Renee had told him, a few weeks earlier, that she'd developed feelings for him, and that instead of shutting it down clearly or telling me about it, he'd just kept having dinner with her. He said he liked the attention. He said it felt easier to enjoy that than to deal with what it meant. He also admitted the "I wish tonight could have lasted longer" message wasn't about the presentation. It was about the dinner. He said he told me it was about work because the truth felt like it would end the conversation before he could explain it the way he wanted to. I sat with that for a long moment before I said anything, because on one hand, nothing he described was cheating in the way I would have defined it a month earlier. On the other hand, he had built a functioning system of half-truths around a woman who told him she had feelings for him, specifically so I wouldn't ask more questions. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything or storm out or any of the things I might have pictured myself doing in that moment before it actually happened. I just felt strangely calm, and then later that night, strangely wide awake, replaying small moments from the last 2 months and reclassifying all of them. The phone face down, the bathroom trips with his phone, the thumbs up instead of a real reply. I slept in the guest room that night, which we don't really have. It's more of an office with a pull-out couch we've used maybe twice. I told him I needed space to think, and he didn't push back on that, which I noticed and appreciated, even in the middle of everything else. The next morning, we didn't talk about engagement timelines or the merger or any of the plans we'd been quietly building around. I canceled dinner with his parents that weekend, telling them I had a work thing, which wasn't true but felt easier than explaining. 4 days later, Daniel told me he'd asked to be moved off Renee's specific work stream without me suggesting it, and that he'd told her directly the dinners needed to stop. I don't know that for certain. I wasn't in the room, but Priya, through the same mutual coworker, mentioned that Renee had apparently been telling people at the office that Daniel wasn't who she thought he was, which at least tells me something changed on that end, even if I can't verify exactly what was said. He also told me something I hadn't asked about, that Renee had said more than once that she assumed our relationship wasn't that serious because of how much time he'd been spending with her instead of talking about me, which means he wasn't just failing to shut something down, he was, at some point, letting her believe something that wasn't true too. We're not living separately anymore, but we haven't talked about the engagement timeline since. I told him I need to see, not hear, that this is actually over, and he says he understands that. I keep going back and forth on how to think about this. Nothing physical happened, by his account, and I don't have a real reason to believe that part is a lie. But he spent 6 weeks managing what I knew, one small omission at a time, specifically because he was aware of how it would look. So now I'm stuck wondering whether I'm overreacting by treating the secrecy itself as the actual betrayal, when the thing he was hiding never crossed the line I always thought mattered most.